Welcome to my show. I'm a guest here. His name is Benny Voncken. Mr. Benny, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Temi, and thank you for having me on your show. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Benny. Firstly, you are the co-founder of Via Stocia. You are also,
Stoica, via
all right, sir.
Stoica.
All right. You are also a coach. Can you please, sir, discuss more about yourself and how you're doing currently now, sir?
Yeah, and that's a great way to start. So my name is I'm Benny. I'm from the Netherlands, but I've lived abroad for over 15 years right now in Spain and Dubai and in other countries. It's kind of traveling around a little bit and working as an English teacher. And from there on, I worked my way into more the philosophical sense. I studied that, but also started applying it more to life as I was going through, the obstacles that we face in life. In my case, that was divorce, dealing with alcohol abuse, and also some physical injury. And stoicism. That's why I with my two partners, Bryce and Brendan, we created Via Stoica, and that we offer Stoic coaching because we've seen how this philosophy helped us overcome these obstacles and live better lives. And now we want to share that value and share those tools and guides to other people to also find ways to live better and more, thrive and flourish as the person that they are.
Thank you so much, Mr. Benny. And as a coach and a co-founder, have you written any book and are you also planning to write any book in the coming future, sir?
That's a question I do get, a lot, and I ask myself as well. I have been writing a blog, so if you go to a website, there's a blog. I've been writing articles for almost 2 years, and people have asked me that a lot. I'm not sure if I'm actually a writer who can write a book because that's such a long process, and I'm not sure if that's really something that I would love to do. I like to write these shorter articles, but maybe at one point I will be able to put them all into a book or do use the content that I have and turn that into a book. But and on the other hand, I'm still kind of there's so many books out there already, and kind of finding the right message, the right angle to approach this and to give the world something new. And maybe that's just my vision, but I like that question. That's something to make me think about that topic again.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Benny. I would love to dive more on the point of Stoicism, sir. You know, the audience would like to know what Stoicism really means. Can you please tell us what Stoicism is and why do you think it is relevant in today's world, sir?
So, Stoicism is a philosophy that comes from the ancient times in Greece. So, we talk about just after Socrates, but around Plato, Aristotle, and we have a ship merchant. He was shipping some purple dyes across the Mediterranean. He had a shipwreck, and he ended up in Athens. This guy called Zeno of Citium, and he wanted to become a philosopher. So he followed people. He followed a cynic from who was a cynic philosopher, Greats of Thebes, and that's where he started to really develop his own philosophy. So Stoicism is based on virtue. That virtue is the only good. That's what the cynics believed as well. And virtue can be divided up into four cardinal virtues. We have wisdom, we have justice, we have temperance, and we have courage. And Stoicism asks all of us to live in accordance with our nature and nature in general. And there are often many misconceptions about Stoicism, that it's not, that it's shutting out all your emotions, that it's not showing them, or that it's just being stone faced against all adversity. But it's really something that is asking you to become a whole person, to really investigate those emotions, to investigate who you are, know yourself, which is something that Socrates was very high, very big on. And he was pretty much one of those. He was the very influential person to the Stoics as well. So when we talk about Stoicism and we have those virtues, we have living in accordance with nature. It is really kind of a practical more pragmatic way of a philosophy. It's similar to like Buddhism or something. It's quite spiritual. It really demands, mindfulness to live in the moment, but also to focus on what is under your control and what isn't, right? So, for example, we have Epictetus, who is in the this is now we're talking more about the Roman stages when we go more to the Roman Empire. This is just around Marcus Aurelius, who has a great book called Meditations, where he also talks about, he's also a Stoic philosopher, but also the emperor of the Roman Empire. But his inspiration, his kind of mentor, they never met, but he had the writings, which we can still read right now, the discourses in the handbook of Epictetus, who was a former slave turned into a Stoic philosopher. And he really started out with his key concept was that dichotomy of control, to see what is under my control and what isn't. And for the listeners, you can draw a circle on a piece of paper, and in the circle you can say, what is under my control. And under my control, Epictetus was very clear. It's our thoughts, our opinions, our judgments, and our actions, right? Everything that is from ourselves, that comes out of ourselves, and everything else, it's not under our control. So even your body, your possessions, your status, your fame, your money, all of these things are not under our control. They are controlled by fate, right? By fortune. So the Stoics, they believe that everything is determined, there's cause and effect, and we have a choice to make. We either accept fate or we work against it. And they have a quick analogy where they say, like, there's a little dog tied to a cart, and the cart keeps running. The cart keeps going at the same space, and the dog has a choice, either to resist and be dragged along, or to walk along and be free, right? To walk along smoothly, to accept everything that happens, right? So we have these concepts that we can read throughout the more modern day Stoics, because this is a concept that was thought of by Nietzsche, but modern day Stoics, they kind of adopted it, which is amor fati, to accept or to love your faith. We have memento mori, remember that you will die, right? This life is mortal. We are mortal, and it's going to end at one point, and that's not bad, right? So that's a natural state of being. Um, we have all these tools, and we can go into that a little bit more, but that's really the crux of Stoicism: to live in the present, to focus on what you can control, and with every action you do it with virtue, you do it well, you try to be the best person that you can, right? And what Stoicism doesn't ask us to be perfect, but we just want to be improving on ourselves. We want to make sure that we evaluate what we do, and make sure that we then, the next time we get in the same situation, we try to do it a little bit better. At least we try to do our best. And that's one of those key concepts of Stoicism. And within that, we find concepts like gratitude, where we have to be grateful for who we are, where we are right now, right? We only have this moment. So instead of worrying about the future, just focus on the actions that we've got to do right now, and these kind of things. So, and when you ask why is it relevant now, I think all of these things are something that a lot of people struggle with, especially now when we have, social media, all these things, they go so quickly with information and everything. Our jobs are more stressful. We have so many more influences from outside to show us how we should live, what a good life will be, what success is, all of these things. Well, we need to define those things for ourselves. So that's why I'm not advocating for people to become a Stoic, but I would love to see more people think about their own philosophy of life, to see what are my values, what are my priorities, what is the kind of life that I want to live, and how do I do that? How do I go about it? Define the concepts like, what is success? Is success mean having a lot of money? Well, that doesn't depend on you. But does success mean having a peaceful life? Making sure that my thoughts and my opinions are correct of what they are? Am I evaluating the events around me correctly, and make sure that my impressions are based on truth? Hey, then that's something that I can control, right? That's something that I that's up to me, and that's in my agency, and I can take responsibility for it. And I think that that's what some people are looking for out there in the world today. And one more thing before I pass it back to you, Temi, is to, that sense of community, right? We see in a lot of places around the world where the normal establishments of, the religion, but also the community sense, and in places where you live, they're kind of getting lost, and people want to have that connection, right? They want to be together with a group of people, and this is something that Stoicism and a philosophy can really add or give to people, where you can come together, which we see like with with Via Stoica, we have spaces on Twitter, on X, where people come and join and share their stories, and I want to hear from other people how they do it. We have the podcast where we get a lot of really good feedback, just hearing people, getting people to say, oh, I really enjoy this and I can really connect with this, so that people don't feel alone. And I think that that's why it's also a very important thing to have nowadays, right? In this modern day where people kind of feel a sense of belonging and a sense of like, okay, this is something that works, that I can apply and it's practical and I can share it with other people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Benny. And that also dive me to the point of challenging situations. I remember you said social media, a lot of challenges in the modern world we are today. How one can also use this faith, this hope, this stoicism to, conquer this modern world that we currently find ourselves today, Mr. Benny. I would like to ask Mr. Benny, how do you think stoicism can help someone remain calm and focused in challenging situations, sir?
That's something that a lot of people ask, and that's a great question for you to ask as well. And we can go to someone like Marcus Aurelius, right? Remember, he's the emperor of the Roman Empire at this moment. He writes a book which is great to read, a meditation. It is not really actually a book; it's his personal diary. So this is his personal thoughts he write, and someone found it or got it, and they published it, and we can still read it now, right? And at one point, he writes like, the obstacle that stands in the way becomes the way. So that's one way we can start looking at our challenges differently. When we change the perception of them, where instead of looking at them as a challenge, as an obstacle preventing us to live the way we want to live, we can look at them as a moment of training, as a moment of learning, as a moment of growth, where we can look at, where we can say, okay, this is going to be difficult, right? Let's not just undermine that. It's going to be tough, it's going to be difficult, but it is for me the right way to challenge myself, to grow, to make sure that I can advance from where I am right now, to put my teachings and my learnings into practice. And that's something that the Stoics try to um, use to change our mindset towards these things, right? We have the Stoics are very much in the belief that our thoughts, the quality of our thoughts, also determine the quality of our life. So we can see an obstacle and we can feel defeated. We can say, "Oh wow, this is too big for me. I'm not going to be able to handle this." And the Stoics say, "No, you can. Right? You have all the tools within you to make sure that you can deal with the obstacles that arise." And that's where when you mentioned faith and hope, they really want to put that back into you, right? They really want to remind you that you have all the tools to deal with the things in the present or moment. And Seneca has a quote. He says, we suffer more often in imagination than we do in reality, which is when we think about future problems or future things, we make them bigger, right? And now we're already suffering for something that is not even happening or hasn't happened or might not even happen at all. While if we focus in our present moment, we can just look at the action that is required of. We can just make sure that we take the steps one by one and focus on that. And I don't know if any of the listeners have experienced that, but once you actually are doing something, when you are taking action, you're not going to suffer as much. You're not going to worry as much because you're just focused on doing and on being good and on doing the right thing. And that's all that the Stoics ask of us. So whenever we face a challenge, right, the Stoics, they tell us, first of all, you have all the tools that you need to combat it. Second of all, change your mindset. It's not a challenge. It's a moment for you to practice, to learn, to grow. And then third of all, they also show us that these are the things that we need in life, right? Seneca has a quote. He says, "You are unfortunate because you've never been unfortunate." So these things are also for us to really build and they grow that resilience. And at the end of the day, everything, nothing external is good or bad. That's the label that we put on it, right? We say, "Oh, this is a challenge for me because it's something that I don't want to happen." Right? So everything that we find a challenge or difficult, that's the things that we usually don't want to have happen. Or when we have success, then yes, that's what I really wanted to have. That's something that I desired. So then I say it's good. But the Stoics say no, it's not good or bad. We don't know. We just have to make the best of it. And That's all the Stoics ask of us. And once you remind yourself of that, that whatever obstacle, whatever happens, if I do my best, that's all I need to do. And whatever the outcome is, forget about the outcome. The outcome isn't very important. It's the process and how you do it. And then you maintain your character and your soul pure and good. And that's the real outcome that you want. All the external outcomes, that's not up to you. So just do your best in those obstacles and those challenges and remind yourself that you have all the tools that you need. Focus on yourself and have confidence in yourself and you'll be fine. And ask for support if you need to.
Yeah, completely agree, Mr. I completely agree, Mr. Benny. Thank you so much, sir. And I'm definitely sure that you also have some success story from your personal experience as a coach, from people who might have also applied Stoic principles, which has really helped them, probably in their finances, in their career, and in their life. Can you please, share with us, any of a success story of a client who really benefited from applying the Stoicism principles, sir?
Yeah, and I'm not gonna, talk about specific clients that I work with, but I can give you some examples of some success stories that we've had. And again, success is a concept that we need to define for ourselves, but I choose to define it as living more peaceful, right? Finding more balanced within. And as you talked about the finances status, I've spoken to people who are very focused on making as much money as they can because then their life will be perfect, then it will happen as exactly the way they are. But what are they forgetting? To live in the moment, right? They're causing themselves so much stress, so much worry because they're chasing something that isn't upon them. And maybe even the goals that they're setting aren't really realistic or not necessary. So that's when I work with people and from a Stoic coaching perspective, we really look at defining the things what means well to them, right? We look at the core of like, who am I, what is important. So sometimes my clients, they come to me and they want to talk about a certain aspect of the life, and as we start to delve deep, we start to really look at what is important to them. So we start to rebuild them up and make sure that they are focused on the right things as they go on their path. So we've had people who are focusing on the wrong goals with well, wrong goals on goals that maybe not be as relevant to them as they thought they might be, right, financially. And what happened there is by lowering those goals, by understanding the concept of enough. What is enough for me? What does money really mean to me? Because we can pick arbitrary numbers or amounts and say this is what I need. But if we really look into it and analyze it, then we realize that we don't need as much as we really think. And I think that that is one of the steps. And I've seen some of the people who I've worked with really reduce their anxiety based on that and are able to focus on other parts of their life and to improve on those things. And even with personal interpersonal relationships where people are, for example, annoyed by the behavior of someone else, maybe the partner or maybe someone at work, and by applying Stoic philosophy, saying let's focus on ourselves, right? I cannot control the other person. Whatever they do, that's not up to me. I get frustrated. Me getting irritated and frustrated is my choice, right? It's my responsibility to attack that. And so we need to delve into, why do I get annoyed? What is happening? What do I want to have? And why is my expectation different from the outcome? And by working on those things, we can really bring it back instead of pointing the finger to others, like you need to change your behavior. No, I need to change my attitude towards this behavior. I need to change the way I react to it. And one way that helps with people that I work with, but also for myself, is to apply a pause. Right? You have Viktor Frankl, who wrote a great book, Man's Search for Meaning. He said, between stimulus and response, there lies our moment. Right? That's where we need to take a moment for ourselves and really assess the situation of what's going on. So by applying that pause, and I've had many success stories from people who I've worked with, and also just people around me. They said, yeah, if I apply this pause and I start to look at the event far differently, that source of annoyance or irritation suddenly becomes something completely different. I can observe myself, how I'm acting, right? Creating this kind of cognitive distancing. And if I do that, then I start to objectively analyze the situation, see that the source of annoyance is just something that's happening, just the behavior of some other person, and that I am getting annoyed. I am allowing myself to get annoyed, and that's where I've got to work on. Why is this happening? Why is this triggering to me? What kind of practices can I apply to this to reduce that? And that's different for everybody, right? So I talked about the pause, but there's so many different techniques to, for example, prepare yourself before it happens, so you can recognize it, and you can kind of give yourself that time to think about how you react. But there are other ways to work on that. So yeah, it's a varied, it's a we with the people we work with, it's such a varied and vast different array of things that they want to work on. And sometimes they come to us to work on one thing, and we end up working on something completely different, because that's where they realize they really need to work on. So those are some of the success stories that I've had with other people, but also with myself. So yeah, that was a great question, man.
Mm. Thank you so much, Mr. Benny. And lastly, some people could feel really, really overwhelmed. They could feel really, really skeptical when it comes to bringing in this, practicing this Stoicism principle. I would like to ask if you have any particular advice for someone who feel overwhelmed by the idea of practicing Stoicism, sir.
That's a great question. And the first advice that I would give, and how I approach, is to take it step by step, and to take one problem or one obstacle or whatever you're working on, just break it down into chunks, smaller parts, and start looking at it from there. Give yourself time. This doesn't have this is a lifelong journey. And I think one of the things that we are facing right now is that people want to have instant fixes, right? They want to read one sentence, or they want to read one book, and suddenly everything is right. No, this takes hard work. This isn't just an easy fix, and it can be overwhelming. I agree. That's why, the coaching is there, but also support from people around you. Sometimes just reading a good book, reading it again. But the real part of it is in the fact that we have to apply it, right? I think it was Socrates who said, like, um, so a philosophy that isn't lived is not a good philosophy, or lived philosophy. That's what it is, right? We need to put it into practice. We can talk about it for hours. I can at least, but we need to put it into practice and make sure that we apply it to our life. And that's where the interesting thing is, if we can first identify some of the parts of our life that we struggle with, and then we can find some practical tools, even the silliest things. For example, driving, right? I don't know if any of the listeners drives, or going to a supermarket or a busy place where you can get annoyed by people. And there's a really interesting little part from Epictetus again. He was talking about the Roman baths, and the Roman baths. I don't know if you're familiar with hammams or the public baths, where back in Rome people would just go and
Mm,
bathe all together. And he said, like, okay, you're going to the bath, right? You're going to bathe, so remind yourself what you're going to do there, but also remind yourself of the people you're going to meet there,
mm,
right? And back in Rome, it was busy. Everybody was just, very close to each other. And he's like, you're going to meet people who are going to, touch you, sprinkle you with water, maybe smelling you, or might steal, all that stuff. That's what you're going to meet. So prepare yourself for that. And your task is to remain calm, to remain peace, and to focus on your task of bathing. And those other people, those are for you to practice, but you can prepare yourself for the same thing with what I apply with driving. I'm not a very angry driver, but I can get annoyed, I can get frustrated by people. So whenever I start to drive, I was like, okay, let me just think about the people I might meet. And then when I do, I know, who I'm going to meet. It's kind of, then I can recognize it. And then I remind myself, okay, what is my task? To drive well, to drive safe, not to do anything that would provoke others, because there's no need to it. So that's my task. So once you start to find those things that you want to struggle with, and you find some tools that help you, those little wins, those little victories can show you the benefits of it. And then it's a matter of keeping going, right? Making progress. Don't beat yourself up if you make a mistake. No, just keep going, keep making progress, and keep walking forward. That's the main thing about any of this, right? And make it your own. Experiment with, the practices, the
mm.
exercises, but tweak them and make them your own, because that's the only way it can really work.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Benny, on the Stoicism principle. And lastly, Mr. Benny, there's a question I normally ask her. From the ancestors, from the forefathers, there are a lot of things that do exist during our ancestral time that is missing in our time today. If there is anyone or anything you'd like to bring back to our time today, what do you think that thing would be, sir?
I like that question a lot, and I think it's a good one to think about. For me, I think it would be the ability to listen more to ourselves and to find that inner voice again, because we have so much noise around us, so much influences, all these, as you mentioned before, the social media and all these people who have their opinions of how we should live, but we tend to forget to listen to ourselves and to have that faith and confidence in ourselves that we can do the right thing, that we have the right tools, and that we can actually live our life the way we want to live. So for me, if I would have to think back of like, what our ancestors used to have, they had their issues, right? They had their problems, but they were living more from who they were. And that's something that I think we're missing, to have that connection with our inner nature and also the nature around us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Benny. Listening to oneself is a very, very important component in someone's life. Either if someone wants to be successful, even from my personal experience, just having to keep that meditation and having that faith, just giving the body the space to communicate with itself really, really works. Thank you so much, Mr. Benny. I want to sincerely thank you for the opportunity and also the time to speak on the Stoicism principle. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on, Temitope. It's a great conversation and excellent
Mm.
questions, and yeah, I hope to speak to you again.
Yes, exactly. Have a wonderful day, sir. Bye bye.